Hi and welcome back. In this video, we are going to add another resource to our application just to help with testing. Now, in the last few sections, we were creating users, authenticating with them using Flask-JWT, but we were never able to retrieve information about a specific user to make sure that, it existed and it was all good. And also, we were not able to delete users. So every time we wanted to, re-register, we had to delete data.db and bring it back and so forth. By the way, talking about data.db, remember that data.db gets created for you whenever you run your application. And here in Visual Studio Code, I've got a terminal that is exactly the same as any other terminal. It's got the virtual environment enabled, and it can run my application in here. So just going to make things a little bit simpler for you without me having to switch back and forth between terminals. We've got a terminal here, but we're going to close it for now because we don't need it. Okay, let's go into adding our resource. We're going to go into user.py in resources, and we're going to see that here we've got our user register class. This resource we created a long time ago for creating or registering new users, and it takes in a username and a password, and it has a post method that allows us to create new user models and save them to the database. Now, I'm going to just collapse that by pressing the little minus icon there, so give us a little bit more room, and we're going to create a new resource so that we can retrieve user details and delete users. This is going to be a small resource that you already know how to make in order to just enable us to do this. So we're going to call it user, and it's going to inherit from the resource class that we already know and love. And it's going to have two methods. A get that is going to take a user ID, and it's also going to have a delete method that is also going to take our user ID. This is similar to, for example, our store resource that I'm going to open just now, where each of the endpoints take in the name. The only difference is that these here are class methods because we don't actually need to access self at all. So I'm going to make them class methods just for simplicity, and this is fine in Flask RESTful. Okay. Now, in the get, all we need to do is take this user ID and find a user model and then return it. So we're going to do user is user model find by ID, user ID. And then we're going to say if not user, meaning we didn't find a user in our database, we're going to return just a message saying user not found. And we're going to return at code 404. Otherwise, we're going to return user.json. Remember that user here is the user model we retrieve from the database. The .json is going to call the JSON method of that user object and return that. Now, that's a good point to think about whether we have a JSON method in our user. And the answer is, open the store by accident. The answer is we don't have a JSON method in our user, so we'll have to create it, and that's fine. Here underneath init, we are going to go ahead and create the JSON, and all this is going to return is an ID and the username. Don't return the password here. That would be a terribly insecure thing to do, so that would be a bad idea. Though this is only for testing, just in case something does happen, try to not return the password there. Let's close that. Now we have user.json, and this endpoint should work. Of course, we have to add our user class to our app.py. We're going to do that in just a moment. But first, let's go ahead and implement our delete. It's going to be fairly similar. We're going to find by ID, our user ID. If the user doesn't exist, we are going to return another 404 saying that the user does not exist. Otherwise, we're going to do user.delete from DB. And then we are going to return a message saying something like user deleted. Okay. Now, delete from DB, is that present in our user? it seems like it is not, so we can do that. Delete from DB. And we can do db.session.delete self and db.session.commit as well. Okay, now we have that in here. So once again, our resource, all it's doing is it's going over and finding a user by ID, which is coming over to our model and running this here. Gonna query all our database and filter by the user ID being equal to the parameter we pass in, and then it's going to get the first user that matches that. Hopefully there should only be one, since our IDs should be unique. If it doesn't exist, it's going to return user not found in both cases. Otherwise, it's either going to return the user.json, or it's going to delete it from the database and return a message saying user deleted. Now we have to go over to our app.py and make sure that we import the user resource there from resources.user, and then of course down here we also have to add it in. So we're going to add resource user, and it's going to be /user there. Now remember how just like our stores, the user endpoints here take in a user ID. So going back to our app.py, we also have to make sure to pass that in just like we did for items and stores. So we're going to do int user ID, because the user IDs in our database are always numbers. Saving that, let's go over to our model, and remember here the ID is defined as an integer, so the thing that we're passing over to our endpoints also has to be an integer. So that's it. We've set it up. Now our resource should be usable. Let's go ahead and have a look at how we can use it from within Postman.